Today, I want to talk about lies. And it struck me as I was reading the articles, as I go over these articles every day. I've been doing this since day 85. I'll be back tomorrow. Please subscribe if you want to stay informed. I was going over this and I was thinking, wow, everything that I'm reading is based on lies. So what I mean by that, let me start with this. I don't often quote Dennis Kucinich. He was a congressman from Ohio, a Democrat. Lies are weapons of mass destruction, but he's right. He's absolutely right. We don't recognize just how damnable, just how miserable, just how destructive lies can be. And so here we're going to start with this. Military Times, Ukraine must demilitarize. I said yesterday, this was Lavrov, Russian foreign minister says, and I want to read just a paragraph or so. Sergei Lavrov said Ukraine must remove any military threat to Russia. What military threat did Ukraine pose to Russia? That's a lie. And so you'll see they keep pushing these lies and using them. These lies are more destructive than the missiles that they're sending because they allow the narrative to move forward. Otherwise, the Russian army will solve the issue. Another lie. His comments also reflected persistent, unfounded claims by the Kremlin that Ukraine and its Western allies were responsible for the 10-month war. Another lie, which allowed this whole thing to get started, which has killed tens of thousands of people and displaced millions. So that's the essence of what got us here. And that was Lavrov yesterday. You can watch that video just going back one. Here, 18,000, what are the consequences? 18,000 civilian casualties according to the UN. Now, it's certainly more than that, but 18,000 that they've actually accounted for, and that's what we're talking about there with the 18,000 figure. I'm sure it's well north of that. Okay, here's some more lies. Here's the ISW, and they were talking about Russian President Vladimir Putin did not offer to negotiate with Ukraine on December 25th, contrary to some reporting. Lies. Now, not only was the reporting not factual, let's not call it a lie, let's call it not factual, but what Putin said, Putin did not explicitly state that Russia was ready to negotiate directly with Ukraine, instead maintaining his false narrative, that's a lie, that Ukraine, which he simply called the other side, had violated, which they didn't, Russia's pre-invasion diplomatic efforts. In fact, if he wanted to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, he'd go back to the Minsk, or not just the Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, he'd go back to the Budapest Memorandum where Russia, the United States, and the UK guaranteed Ukraine's borders for giving up their nukes. Putin also stated that he thinks Russia is, quote, operating in a correct direction. Lies. He like everything's going according to plan. It's not true. Putin's December 25th statement is a part of a deliberate information campaign aimed at misleading the West, that's called a lie, to push Ukraine into making preliminary concessions. Are you seeing the pattern here with lies? Okay, Putin is likely concerned over the lack of support for his war in Ukraine. Now, this I found absolutely amazing among elites. Okay, so his own power base. His power base is not the people, but the elites. Okay, he's worried about the lack of support in Ukraine among elites and maybe setting information conditions for nationalization of their property. And that would probably include, now that's Ukrainian elites, but that would probably include even elites that are over in the eastern regions of the country. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I bet you that he will do that before too long. Okay, this is the British Ministry of Defense intelligence update. In recent days, Russia has likely reinforced Kremna sector of the front line of Luhansk Oblast. And I'll show you where Kremna is here on the map. It's up here, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, Kremna has been relatively vulnerable since Ukrainian forces advanced through the town of Lyman, and they have been. It's a crossroads, and it's actually a really key place. Russia has constructed an extensive new defenses in the area and will likely prioritize holding the line there. Okay, so that's important. Now, I'm not a military guy, and I don't claim to be, but here's the map. And here's Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, right? And remember that in about August. If you go down just a little bit, you see Bakhmut. This is where there's some heavy fighting. But up here, they retook Lyman, and there was a major railroad stations and trains and whatever there. So it was a crossroads town. Here's another one. You can even see on the map this main artery going through. And if they can capture this area, it really cuts off the supply lines coming down this way. And maybe even if they can take Savatov, if they can do that as well, even better, and then they can start to make inroads. But there is a defensive line building in here, to my understanding. And again, not a military guy, but this could make some difficulty for the Russians. And the Ukrainians know it, and the Russians know it. Here's Volodymyr Zelensky talking about it. I held a meeting of the staff today, 44th of this year already. The topic is clear. First of all, Bakhmut, Crimea, and Donbass in general. So he knows what needs to be dealt with, and he's talking about this with them. We continue to prepare the defense and security forces of Ukraine for the next year. It must be a crucial year. We understand the risks in winter. We understand what we have to do in the spring, and therefore we understand what results the entire defense and security sector must demonstrate. So he's talking about what is going on now. Take this same quote, you'll see now in Pravda, Zelensky gives his vision of 2023. This is what I just quoted, right? Exact same line. But they go on to the next line and say this. The Ukrainian finance minister earlier said that Ukraine's defense spending increased several times after February 24th. According to him, the country spends half of its budget on defense. Okay, that's true, but it's a lie. Because a lie is not just a lie, like white is black and black is white. That's not it. A lie can also be shading the truth, or not telling the whole truth, or giving the impression of something. What they're giving the impression of, and they're doing it in Pravda, which is Russian propaganda, they're giving the impression that, wow, they're in terrible straits. Half of their budget is going to defense. That's true. Half their budget is going on defense. But they're also getting donations from NATO and the United States and all over the world. And right? So it's making it look bleaker than it is. When in reality, the Russians are spending 30% of their budget on defense, or upwards of 30% of their budget on defense, and they aren't getting donations from the rest of the world. So they're actually worse, but this is a mirrors. This is what the Russians do with their propaganda. They say you're doing the thing that is actually happening to us, or that we're doing, and that's how it works. Lies. Okay, next. Here is an article, and this was actually just really amazing. Radio Free Europe, we fight with our brains, they fight with numbers. And this is telling the truth, okay? For the paratroopers of the Ukrainian Airborne Brigade, there's only one way to describe the waves of Russian infantry who are relentlessly pressing the Ukrainian lines in around Donbas city. Meat. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. First, they throw the mobilized soldiers in for certain death like meat. Then, if they break through, the more experienced fighters move in. So, the lies in this were that you're being mobilized, but you're not going to see fighting, or it's not going to be a problem, or it's going to take a long time before the fight. No, this is what's happened. Now, the trick is that only so many soldiers, as these soldiers die, as they use these like cattle, as they meat, right? As they use these soldiers up, their bodies are being shipped home, or their loved ones are missing them, or what, right? The longer the war goes on, the more that curve goes up of more dead Russians, and the worse it's going to be for Putin over time. Okay. The Russians understand that if they lose Crimea, their entire line of defense will fall, said Hayday in a separate post. And I think, while I don't know whether their entire line of defense will fall, I know that if they can break through here and kind of break through, and then the defense line is like this. It's not like this. So if they can get in, they can get behind that line and do a lot of mischief. Okay, let's keep moving. Next article, Russians keep pressure up along the entire eastern front. The enemy continues offensive actions in Bakhmut, Avdiivka directions, and down here, Zelensky's announcement came. Now, this was really also very interesting, and I flagged that too. Zelensky's announcement came as a British military expert told the BBC that Ukrainian forces were very close to an important breakthrough around Crimea and Savatov in Luhansk, what I just showed you on the map. Such a breakthrough could push Russians back some 65 kilometers, close to where the invasion effectively began in February. That's freaking crazy that they're that close to actually pushing the line back in that place. Okay, here's some more fun with some lies, and I would say now it's time for fun with Russian state media, but this isn't Russian state media. This is Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group. Now, here's the headline. Russia plans to imprison soldier who attempted murder and plunder in Ukraine. And I read that and I went, wow, how about that? And then I read the next line, for circulating fake news. So it's not for actually murdering and plundering in Ukraine. It's for talking about it. And now he's being prosecuted. This guy is being prosecuted for circulating fake news that's dishonoring the military in Russia. How about that? Now, here's some actual fun with Russian propaganda. Ukraine presents a global cyber threat, says Russia. Remember the smoke and mirrors, the reverse image thing I was just talking about? Ukraine poses a global challenge to the international community. Uncontrolled distribution of cyber weapons. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Oleg Syro Molotov said. The threat posed by Ukraine in the information space are of a universal nature. Russia began its military operation in its neighboring state. In late February, it faced unprecedented external aggression in the information space. That's coming from Russia. From Russia. I mean, they're the ones talking about this. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they would say that because they're obviously, clearly the aggressors in cyber warfare. Okay, well, that's where we are. If you got something out of this, would you please consider liking, sharing? As you do that, it helps the algorithm. Thank you for those of you who decided that they were going to support me and buy me a coffee. I very much appreciate it. If that's how you want to support the channel, that's great. If you just can do it with likes, I appreciate likes. I do want to say one more thing, and that is I've been doing this since day 85, and you can see this here. And so here's my earliest video of me talking about this. Day 85, we're still at Mariupol surrendering. That's where we were when we started. I did it from day 85 and I'll be doing it tomorrow. So please subscribe and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.